These last few days have been very funny, but also chafed up against my brain very weirdly. As a guy who is tangentially connected to several of the major parties involved in recent events, but the linchpin of which is a piece of media I have next to no hands-on experience with, only with the people who have consumed that media over the years, this has certainly been a thing to watch. Hi again, guys, and like most of the worst things in my life tend to be, this situation is mostly about Homestuck. In the blistering week, anybody who is or was an avid fan of that webcomic just survived. I'm gonna go into this like you are like me and that you're a relative outsider to all of it, and I'll give you the broad strokes so that you can understand like the sheer magnitude of the whiplash Homestuck consumers have been experiencing. Homestuck is a legacy, damn near classic webcomic started by this one guy, Andrew Hussie. However you feel about the quality of the comic itself, it is firmly cemented as one of the biggest phenomenons of internet media in the 2010s. It ran for 7 years, the official run being over 8,000 pages and 800,000 words of webcomic with custom music, art, and writing, and a ton of contributors over the years. It was a genuinely pioneering, forward-thinking work of art and a formative influence for a lot of media that came after it. Notably, some of Toby Fox's early work was making music for Homestuck, and he's been buddies with Andrew Hussie for a long time. Undertale was literally made in Andrew Hussie's basement for some of its development, at least. That is a thing both Toby Fox and Andrew Hussie have said and confirmed. Even if your only experience with Homestuck is thinking it's kind of weird or being off-put by its fan base, its legacy has led to things a lot of people would consider to be very good. The thing with Homestuck, though, is that, kind of similarly to Undertale, it was designed from the ground up to be experienced in the original medium it was made in. The way that base Undertale was made only really works as a video game, or at least the story is best told in that format. There are certainly compelling fan comics, fan art, fan fiction, and fan animations that are distinctly not video games, but the creation of the world as it appears in the game is held up by the load-bearing pillar of that world being in a game. Homestuck is a webcomic through and through. One that you read on a browser or computer, primarily on a desktop PC with Flash support. There have been physical prints of Homestuck that you can technically read the story on, but in the way House of Leaves is way shittier if you're reading it on a Kindle instead of a physical copy, Homestuck as print media is a departure from the intended experience. I haven't read it yet myself, but it's not hard to understand that a piece of media or art is generally designed with the medium it occupies in mind. The issue with that is the official Homestuck website, where people were reading it for ages, is fucking broken. It's a site that is coming up on its 20th birthday, and it shows its age like a lot of legacy websites that weren't updated as the internet moved on from Macromedia Flash do. If you go to Homestuck.com, this is what the first page looks like. There are missing images, it's mostly blocks of gray and white, and generally it just shows its age, which makes the webcomic very hard to access through official means. Thankfully, it's a project with a very large fandom and love for the series who were willing to take up the job of making it accessible themselves. Come 2020 and enter the unofficial Homestuck collection. It was an offline reader for Homestuck that filled in the gaps the current busted web experience had been riddled with, and was a very curated effort by passionate fans to restore the ability to read Homestuck in a way close to the original experience. There is a separate history to the unofficial Homestuck collection, or UHC, but I'll be glossing over a lot of it because it's outside the purview of this video and we are technically still in setup territory. Point is, this was a fan work that was directly competing with Homestuck proper. It was effectively a market replacement for the official thing, even if the site itself was defunct and not much of an offering at all at this point. So there was always the fear that the owners of the original work, Andrew Hussie and whoever else, could come after this project, where at least legally they would be completely within their right to do so. You see it with Nintendo shooting down all sorts of fan projects that use their IP, you see it with El Dorito at one point being shut down by Microsoft as they geared up to announce the Master Chief Collection, and that's among any number of other examples where companies go out of their way to protect their IP or otherwise shut down the passionate works of fans. However you view it, it happens and the result is the same. So tension was in the air on what Andrew was going to do regarding UHC. And to his credit, it seemed like he was a pretty good sport about it when it first came out. He co-signed a tweet saying that the unofficial Homestuck collection was the best way to read the webcomic. In his official link tree, Andrew Hussie has links to all the projects he had worked on or was currently working on, and he included a link to the official web version of Homestuck, but listing it as somewhat broken, and right under that, he had a link to the unofficial offline version, which he labeled as not broken for Homestuck. Things seemed hunky-dory. Fans had a way to read read Homestuck again, and Andrew didn't seem to be taking any issue with it. In fact, sometime in 2023, communication was even set up between those working at Homestuck Official and the caretakers of the unofficial Homestuck collection. But if you're watching this video, you probably know that this was a back and forth that lasted several years until a few days ago when Geo, one of the main overseers of the UHC project, posted a very long blog post saying that after years of back and forth with Homestuck Official, they had to take down the UHC's web presence and that they and the original team working on the project had to cease maintenance of their work. At the top of the post, they say, "This was not driven by copyright concern, community relations, or any healthy professionalism, but by spite and a need for control." Like I said, I'm not going to be legislating the details of this post. It should be said that it is a long fucking read. It makes a lot of claims, it has a lot of evidence it brings up that I would have to parse the veracity of myself to comment on directly, and it references a lot of Homestuck community history and private correspondence that I need to spend ages catching up on to meaningfully address here. And like I said, that's not even the subject of this video. This part is still all technically backstory for the main multiverse crossover I want to get into. The important part is that on August 8th, 2025, the wider public found out what the fate of the UHC would be, and it turned into a firestorm for Homestuck Official. At this point, as an outsider, this is the most I've had to actively hear about Homestuck ever. I haven't been digging into this shit on my own time, and thus, I didn't know how the fans of Homestuck felt about the primary author behind it. Is it like Sonic, where Yuji Naka got arrested for insider trading and disgraced himself doing so? Or is it like Miyamoto, where his creative output have damn near transcended the mediums they were made in? Well, I know now that even if it is just one sect of the fanbase, there is a vocal contingent who fucking hate this guy, creates some of the best works of the past decade, is an egotistical maniac, keeps harassing random people. His newest shit isn't as good as the old shit, proceeds to ruin his reputation by being horrendous to his most devoted fans. This post is about Andrew Hussey, GIF unrelated. Comparing any creative to Kanye West leaves me with a very strong image of how you view that person. Kanye is one of the greatest musicians to ever live. He is also a Nazi now. Drawing comparisons to him in this way implies some very strong opinions of that person. I am not informed enough to make a value judgment on that stance, but it makes me think that this belief is one you hold very deeply. And you weren't alone on that. These types of tweets were everywhere. People were saying that Andrew made it so you couldn't read Homestuck at all, and that he would die alone with no loved ones around him. To be clear, I'm pretty sure you still can read the unofficial Homestuck collection through its GitHub link, though that is subject to change and obviously is less immediately accessible than it having its own website and landing page. And despite all of this, this is still the most alive I've ever seen this fandom. I wasn't following it in any meaningful way when it was in its prime. I'm used to only seeing the occasional Homestuck profile picture in my replies. I know some people in my audience like the series, and overall, I was just very neutral on the whole thing and only really had opinions so far in as to how it affected internet culture at large and spawned off different things that I have consumed. Now, as far as I'm aware, this next bit, the main event, was somehow a coincidence. Geo posted the announcement about UHC having to shut down on August 8th because that was as good a day as any to do it, and it set the fandom ablaze in ways I've never seen. And then the next fucking day, August 9th, at a convention, Animate Orlando, that likely had this announcement locked in months in advance, completely separate from the UHC post, likely with nothing to do with the previous day's controversy, the biggest news to come out about official Homestuck media in years gets dropped on our heads like a grand piano above a doorframe. Back to back like the cover of Lethal Weapon. Back to back like Jordan 96-97. An official Homestuck animated pilot was announced and is set to be released soon, hopefully. Not only was it revealed that vivziepop, creator of Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss, was involved, but an Australian division of her animation studio Spindlehorse was formed called Spindleroo, and they were handling the production of the series, with the trailer for the pilot also making its online debut directly on vivziepop's channel. Crazy stuff. Andrew Hussey was obviously attached as well, but on top of that, fucking Toby Fox is voice acting the main fucking protagonist, John Egbert. There are other impressive names attached, like Adam MacArthur of Marco Diaz of Star vs. the Force of Evil fame, and Colleen O'Shaughnessy, who has been the voice of Tails the Fox for years. But the other Fox struck me in the sternum so deeply because that dude has been doing damn near everything he can in recent years to not let a lick of his modernization identity get out there. He only ever uses his little annoying dog Sona to represent himself online. When he appears on live streams, he uses a text-to-speech voice instead of speaking. He's a hermit. I can't find the original tweet, but somebody else said it best, where this motherfucker is a recluse on the internet most of the time, but he does not play about this Homestuck shit. He might be the most autistic Homestuck fan ever, where if he would ever get the chance to work on it again, he decided it's time to lock the fuck in. Speaking of autism, this unholy trinity is coming to me at such a strange time. I was late to Undertale and Deltarune by years. I didn't play either until like 2022, having remained mostly unspoiled for Undertale that whole time. I played the first 2 Deltarune chapters well after they came out, and it wasn't until like the full paid release of chapters 3 and 4 that the rot consumed my brain entirely, and now I make Deltarune videos every other day on With a Y and can't fucking stop even if I wanted to. Alongside that, I know some of the people who work at Spindlehorse and people who have done stuff for Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss. Some of those guys are straight up my oomphies. On top of that, I'm doing my own stuff behind the scenes, which I can't speak on at this moment, but that is exciting and kind of tangentially relates to this topic on a macro level. So this is like a weird nexus point of my current hyperfixation, my personal social life, and the new types of creative work I'm doing for the first time, where all of these things in my life have been brought together by something I have pretty much zero personal stakes in: Homestuck. This video is mostly going to center on like Toby Fox and Andrew Hussey. Some of the commentary I could give regarding vivziepop would be a bit redundant. With Homestuck, I floated through life knowing what it is, knowing it's important in some way, and knowing people who love that series, all while not having gotten into it myself. And it's all happened at a time when the franchise is backdropped by renewed backlash against its creator, alongside other creatives that are considered controversial. So having said all that, is it weird that I've never been more motivated in my life to find out what Homestuck even actually is? Like, my curiosity has been piqued. I understand that I am lacking so much context of what the source material is, the history of the fandom that coalesced around it, and how its creator has interacted with the people behind the work, and how its creator has interacted with the people who love that work so much. These days, shit is dicier than ever, and I've only managed to become even more intrigued. For the longest time, I passively let Homestuck exist as something that's just over there that I don't care for much, before going on to actively avoiding it. Not because the fandom scorned me or through any fault of the series itself, more just that, in my opinion, the worst person I've ever met was a really big fan of Homestuck, and it just left me with a sour taste in my mouth whenever I thought of the series. If you know, you know. Nowadays, I feel like I can put Homestuck in a vacuum and maybe try to enjoy it on its own merits, which feels weird when the people who already like it seem to have been badly burnt by a thing that at one point or another they adored. It's this weird dichotomy where my interest is at an all-time high because of those attached to a new iteration of this project, the animated pilot, whereas those who have already experienced it already think those names, which interest me because they're involved, does more to sully the name of a guy like Toby Fox, who most hold in good standing, than it does to lend credibility to the Homestuck stuff that Toby Fox is signing on for. Don't get me wrong, I've said how crazy it is that Toby is appearing in this media in this way, doing a fully voiced role, but I think it's important to clarify that he's not in some kind of executive decision-making role. Mechanically, he's a voice actor who got hired for a job, despite him only having a few VA roles to his name before all this. He's getting voice directed by someone else, and I don't even know if he's contributing music to this thing, the role that people would probably most expect him to fill if he ever came back to Homestuck. As a content creator, the nature of my creative works means that for you to enjoy it, you have to buy into some part of my personality. Even if it's a version of me that's been filtered through and curated a dozen times over, it's still me in some form. And that's a different relationship than what a guy like Toby Fox has with the people who enjoy his work. The level of parasociality a viewer of mine might have with me is stronger than his, but it's also more directly implied in the art that I make, and therefore much easier to directly address. Toby Fox, on the other hand, makes things that obviously have his personality and sense of self injected into them, but as video games, they ask you to suspend your disbelief and to not think of these works as something that a guy made, but as transportative worlds that you are getting a glimpse of. Truth be told, I feel like like the people who are surprised or even frowning on Toby Fox working with Andrew Hussey have lost the plot a little on what their connection to him really is. It's perfectly fine to disapprove of the actions of any public figure, but to expect them to bend their choices to the will of the wider internet is, if not asking too much, at least unrealistic. With how consumption of art works, we know more about Toby Fox as an individual than he knows about any single one of us, even if he obscures himself. Sure, he can appreciate those who engage with his works broadly, but most of the people who do are going to be seen as just a part of that broad collective, not specific people who approve or disapprove of his actions that he would be individually sad about disappointing. We aren't his friends, but you know who is? Andrew Hussey! And that has been the case for over a decade now. A guy who let Toby make his, at the time, pooey little indie game Undertale in his basement and gave him a shot at making his own creative works into something concrete, that's someone you probably lock in with for the rest of your life after they do that for you. Large swaths of the internet don't like Andrew Hussey and disapprove of his action. They may even be justified in doing so. I'm not sure. I don't mean to dismiss the genuine issues people have with them, but as far as I can tell, the craziest accusations that seem substantiated about him are that he's kind of a dickhead and has a history of mismanaging his IP and the community around it, whether that's the type of subject matter he includes in Homestuck or how he directly engages with the community in general. But when you're a public figure of any size, there are always going to be people online, some validly and others not, who think you as an individual are a complete fucking screw-up. And that is an issue that scales with exposure. I don't know that I need to tell you all this explicitly, but thinking about how much someone you've never met before hates you all the time and trying to change yourself at the behest of this concept of a person is not very healthy or an at all feasible way to live life. It can be a factor that you reasonably consider, but doing it too much will probably leave you paralyzed and unable to do much of anything. If you want to live anything resembling a stable life while being a massive public figure, you kind of have to insulate yourself from that type of talk and nurture the friendships you have with people that you actually know and have direct relationships with, both with folks completely separated from the concept of public life, you know, your day ones and childhood friends and all that, but you also have to do it with people who can actually empathize with that experience you're going through. A type of person that is few and far between, but especially so if you want somebody going through that you have a long-standing connection to. At the end of the day, unless the evils put onto someone are well substantiated for one, and like truly evil, like I'm talking confirmed murder, rapist, pedophiles, the collective opinion of the internet, and especially the opinion of one niche of the internet, if you want to be a functioning human, have to be pretty far back from the front of the priority list. And certainly not ahead of the actual people you know and have as a part of your life. This isn't to say that a fandom's grievances aren't substantiated or that they're completely invalid about how they feel about a person or their specific action, but especially in cases of guilt by association for situations like this, the idea that the parasociality you have with a creator is their ultimate responsibility of who they should consider or answer to is a losing battle. Kendrick Lamar makes some of the most introspective music of the modern day, and he's a raging hypocrite about it. And for me, that doesn't detract from the message. Gandhi was not a perfect bastion of morality, but the action by example he put on in the context he existed in was powerful and important nonetheless. Biggie was fat. If you put someone on a pedestal, intentionally or not, it's bound to degrade at some point, no matter what they did. They were always going to do something that lowered their standing. Whether or not that's at the point where them being just as human as you comes starkly into view, where you realize they make decisions using the same faculties afforded to all of us, or you just find you have a disagreement with them that casts them in a new light in your eyes. Does that contradiction of your view degrade the work they've made earlier, which you previously enjoyed and cherished? Is this a result of these kind of opinions setting us up for this kind of failure? Or is it confrontation with how we view public figures from the start? Twist, I don't actually know. For me, it is just something to think about. How you consume media and treat the people who made that media as complex and easy to get lost in the spectacle of, but I hope this made you think about it at least a little. That's all I got. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe with notifications on. Anyways, this has been Kwite, and I might actually read Homestuck now that it's harder than ever to do so.